Right. Hello and welcome to this episode of CPO Perspective. I am delighted today to welcome my guest, David Sinclair. David, perhaps you want to say hello.
Thank you very much, Richard, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Good. So tell us, where do you work? What do you do? What's your current role?
Currently, I'm the Group Head of Procurement for Robert Walters Recruitment Company.
Oh, okay.
That's a global role to support Robert Walters across all our offices in all parts of the globe in the purchase and management of third-party goods and services.
Wonderful. Well, look, when I normally do these things, I always kind of think, right, let's get through what was the journey and let's hear what's on your mind. But having chatted to you, I am really looking forward to hearing you share your journey to how you got to be head of procurement. So, look, over to you. What was your route?
I think my route is possibly like many others. Is I didn't wake up as a child and think procurement is my calling in life. That's what I want to do. I think like many others who you interview, it's a sort of journey of discovery, and we either end here by default or sometimes design, but we end up in the right landing place for a role which probably suits our personas, our personality and our experience. Just a very brief thumbnail summary of myself. So I've spent the bulk of my working life in management consultancy, probably about 25 years or so, of which with some major consultancy organizations such as Accenture, PwC, and EY, to name a few. And I was fortunate enough to work with some very outstanding individuals and teams globally. My roles and activities took me across different continents. I spent 10 years in North America, based out of Toronto, and also worked in Southern Africa, Europe, and briefly in parts of Asia as well as other places I've mentioned. And most of the roles I undertook were related to procurement transformation, organizational design, implementation, cost management, cost identification, organizational enhancement and capabilities, review and evaluation, variations of what we now call the procurement transformation journey. And prior to that, I spent some time in the armed forces. I was fortunate enough to be in the most prestigious regiment in the British Army.
Apart from the Royal Engineers, that is.
Well, even they had a outstanding unit called
9 Para.
Nine Para Squadron, who I came across and was very impressed with. I was also very impressed, Richard, to throw your bung. I was also very impressed with 5/9 Independent Commando.
Is where I spent my time, which is wonderful.
They were an outstanding unit, and they had a very good recce troop.
They did. I did. I never did. I never did recce troop, but some very good friends of mine did, and they were a good bunch of guys.
They were indeed very impressive. Great bunch. I had, when I was at the Officer Training Corps, one of the permanent staff instructors was a staff sergeant from 5/9, and he was extremely influential.
Oh, there we go.
on me and on my thoughts and deeds and aspirations, and I was very grateful for that.
So army, consulting, and then you stepped out of the dark side back into the light of a full-time role. Was that the trip?
As with many of these things, it came up by opportunity. So I had this brought to me at a point where I was, how can I put this diplomatically, in between roles, and I was by default contemplating another role in consulting, right. And this option came up, and the attraction was, this is a sector I knew little about. The role was quite challenging to put in place, something that hadn't been in place before, in a very entrepreneurial and very dynamic organization. It's very front office focused. I'm very, very, very much a sales focused organization. So from my perspective, it was a chance to jump into something a bit unknown and to learn on the one hand, to learn on the right hand, but also supply experiences collectively on the left hand. So an opportunity to bring the two together.
Good. So,
I'll just say on just a few points on Robert Walters. It's a fantastic company. It's full of great people. It really is. Have a global presence. I've, although I may work in the back office, I also try and work and help support the front office. I was at a networking event yesterday in Manchester with our recruitment teams, and the subject for discussion with various clients and previous clients and interested parties was that well-known and well-established chestnut, the use of AI in procurement, and what does this mean to yourself? The challenges. So I know we never discuss that in any forums anywhere ever, and and I think at some point we need to sort of curtail our desire to continually discuss this in the way we are. But yesterday's was very insightful, because I think where I think the conversation went to and where it landed was possibly the area where we collectively need to go, and I'll possibly speak about this a bit more later. And that's on aspects of governance. For example, who's ultimately responsible in an organization for AI? Is it by default the CIO? Is that the right person? What about the legal aspects, which are moving faster than legal legal process can maintain? What about the fact that anyone can, in essence, become a developer on the spot? So there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think the true answers are some of the models we have in place, some of the organizational structures are no longer capable of reflecting the rate of change. So we need to be a bit more open-minded to how we go about doing these things. And then on the flip side, from a management perspective, one thing that came up was, well, how do we ensure that if we're using, say, advisory services and the like, how do we ensure that somebody has actually reviewed the outputs and the analysis to see that this is actually true, legit, the references do exist, and there's been some human intervention or experience review on what's coming back to us. So that's something I'm very keen to push in any agreements we have. There's a stipulation to that basis.
Do you know what? I think this is such a good topic, because not only is everything you've just covered in terms of, are we clear that it's doing what we think it's doing? Are we clear how the data's being handled? Are we clear who owns it? But actually, what's becoming really clear just in the last few weeks is there's this growing understanding of token cost, that, that AI is not a freebie. And actually, some of the assumptions we made that we could replace stuff, and the classic example I read about just last week is, paying a top-end model AI as part of an agentic AI to create PDF documents, which is actually available free in Word. So how did that come right? So there's a lot to discover.
I think we'll go through the following, and I think we are going through, which is we all must be involved in it. If we're not involved in it, then we're being left behind. Rather than the question is, how can we best re-engineer our organization? And where would this fit as part of that? I don't believe that AI is a substitute for strategy and considered thought. And I think my concern is that sometimes it is, or there's fear of missing out syndrome, which is universally applied. There's two syndromes going on concurrently. One is fear of missing out. That's point one. And point two is, has anybody out there got the magic formula that we can all just mimic and copy? And I hear that, and I've been to a number of forums in the past sort of 6 to 9 months in various parts of the UK, and various attendees, some very advanced, some major enterprises and organizations are very advanced in the use, other ones sort of casting around in the wilderness. But the same point keeps coming up. There's this inherent desire to find someone who's got all the use cases, all the examples, the end-to-end solutions. And I don't think anyone's really got to that stage yet, or got enough definitive experience to say, well, look, here's our playbook. And even if they had, that doesn't mean it's right for you.
Do you know, I think about it this way. You know, you're an experienced procurement professional. You work effectively where you are today. But if I picked you up and put you into a new CPO role in a different organization tomorrow, you wouldn't work the same, because we know everything around you has just changed. And I think, as you say, there's this assumption that there's a nirvana perfect AI tech solution that will work for everybody. And it can't, because we're all different. We've all got different tech stacks, different processes. Everything is different,
Yes.
right?
I think, once again, it's interesting how these conversations always come back to the same basic principles. I think the same basic principles apply. And that is, what is the business strategy? What is it we're trying to do? Is our strategy to increase market growth,
Yep.
penetration, retain existing scale, fire off merger or acquisition? What is it we're trying to do, and how do we have to assemble ourselves accordingly? And where does the application of AI factor into this? What I do think it gives us an opportunity or an excuse to do is just not be tied to convention. I had in the conversation I had yesterday with a colleague sitting next to me, I simply said, look, my premise is simply this. I think we have to question a number of assumptions, especially in the procurement world. I don't understand why we spend so much time talking about transactions, volumes, approvals, downstream processes. They add no value to nobody, and they don't make any determined difference in performance, profitability, or cost. So therefore, these are things to me that should be as reduced as
Yep.
possible and as simplified as
Yep.
possible. That should be your start of a 10. He then asked me, what would I place my bets on if we look at STP, spend analysis, contract management? I said, well, the best way to answer that is to put them on a list, look at what the pain points are, and then triangulate with the business to see which ones cause the business the greatest degree of impact. Because if you can't address the points that hit the business in the most acute way, there's always a relevance that you're addressing a procurement agenda, but not meeting the business's requirements. So there's a bit of triangulation required.
I agree. And it's this danger, as you say, of FOMO leading you to get something when there is actually no problem to solve. There's no pain point for it to address. So why would we invest our effort in doing that?
There's also a lot of we don't know yet, and it's not clear. And what came up yesterday on the whole aspect of governance is just how the rate of change, the rate of application, the rate of use is creating precedents and also liabilities
Right.
and commitments which nobody has fully thought through or understand the consequences of, or understand what the ramifications would be. I think there's a few things we do know, though, collectively, and we can be certain
Right.
of. One of them is, I don't think any of us could say with hand on heart that we would leave an AI-based solution to come up with results with which we wouldn't check ourselves.
Totally agree.
And then secondly, that the application of AI is happening in a coordinated and integrated fashion. It's very diffuse at the moment, and where it goes, I don't think the controls or ability to sit above it all are as agile as they need to be. But let's just accept that that's a reality and see what we can do to try and mitigate that to the best extent possible. But it throws up some organizational questions about, do we need, for example, one point raised yesterday, which I thought was very valid, is, do we actually need board level or executive level an AI version of a COO or a CIO focused purely on AI? Is that where we've got to? It's a good question to ask.
It is.
My,
It
my,
is. And sorry, just to cut across you quickly. I mean, I remember 6, 7 years ago when RPA, robotic process automation was the big topic of conversation. And we were then talking about, should procurement have a robot master? Should there be a role for someone who's solely converting procurement process into, RPA systems. And I guess this is the same topic, right? But just at a bigger scale.
I think it's, if I was going to, and my colleagues who know a lot more about RPA than I do will probably counter or correct me, but I always thought that was very much focused on process optimization
Really?
and process improvement, whereas the AI to me is much more broader based and has much more impact on everything from one is you know, is this truly a potential employment candidate
Hmm.
who is a true and his details are true and fair reflection of him, or has he written the whole thing? And then on the second point, because I'm fortunate that my other half works in academia, the challenges they are facing with determining, understanding, and reasoning when they know in many instances students are using AI to produce their outputs. How do you then how do you then test or evaluate understanding, knowledge, and reasoning? So I think we're moving back to a more interactive process to do so, to test reasoning. Because if everything's based on written report, how do you know that written report has actually been
I
written?
love this point. I was talking to a teacher the other day. They said they're actively considering a move back to what you and I did, good old O
Yeah.
levels. O levels and A levels.
Yes.
You actually test knowledge with no tech, because if you don't do that, and maybe add a Viva as well, as you say, a spoken interview, because I think that's an improvement. But the days of being able to get qualifications by marking coursework, everyone's using we all know how people are doing coursework. You and I are doing coursework with it. So you're right. It's and how do we understand what that means for the way that we develop people?
Very much so. So that this covers all aspects from what would be traditionally HR through to sales and
Yeah, yeah,
business
right.
development, through to operational management. It covers all aspects and beyond. And I don't think we've got organizational agility to effectively manage or keep ahead of that. And that's on top of all the legal aspects, the consequential aspects, etc., etc. So I think we'll have to. I think one thing we should just do is accept that there'll be a degree of uncertainty, a degree of discomfort, and a degree of, shall we say, tightrope walking for maybe for quite a long period of time until we start to either come to terms with this, accept us, or reflect us in in our behaviour and in our way of doing business.
I love it when I get ideas planted in my head, and you've just done one, which is you made a really good point. Have organizations got the agility to understand AI, which is supposed to be helping them become more agile? I mean, that's a catch-22. I don't understand what I'm trying to do while knowing I need to do it, because everyone's telling me it will improve stuff. Catch-22. I'm stuck. What do I fix first? That's a great concept.
And I think sometimes in life, as we know, you've got to let things happen to have a point of experience to draw
Right.
on. I still think there's very much a case of we can use AI to reduce headcount or to basically, in essence, create efficiencies. Because a lot of talk is about all the potential roles that will be superseded by it. I have to say, at this point in time, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing the level of
Yeah,
efficacy,
yeah.
the level of
Mm.
accuracy, and level of consistency to say, yes, that's an absolute certainty. Let's do it. I have no doubt it will get to that point. But let me just give you a very simple random illustration. Um, because a colleague of mine in a totally different world is a photographer. And he's saying, well, he'll be replaced by AI. Well, unfortunately, I still see some of the outputs from AI, and it's just not
No,
there.
no,
It's there, but it's not there. You can still see a sense of
you
differences.
can.
And I still see that. It's not to the level. Will it get there beyond? I'm sure it will. Will this have a massive impact as it is on entertainment and infomercial sectors completely? And it already is to many extents. But again, a lot of that's focused on headcount reduction, I
Yeah.
think.
I
not the quality of what's coming out.
And I think this is a really good point, because I mean I was quite open about it. I mean I said at a conference at the beginning of last year that half of existing procurement roles would be replaced by next year, and by the way, I still stand by that, but with a caveat that I'm becoming really, really focused on, which is I think half the roles that exist will go, because they're already going. I mean, P2P used to be people. It's not. It's
Yes.
technology. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Contract checking, risk monitoring, which is far better done by technology. But the bit that
Yes.
I'm becoming clear on is I don't think it's a reduction in headcount. I think it's a reallocation of headcount. Because as you say, not only have we got to check and make decisions based on what technology tells us, because we have a governance responsibility, but also it should open up the things that we've always had to under-resource because our headcount was committed to things that, frankly, like you say, didn't add much value. And I think that's going to be a really interesting journey that pans out over the next 12 months. So, I mean, as you look at your role now, I mean, you've shared a lot of thought. If there was one thing that you're kind of laser focused on at the moment as a CPO that you is either a worry bead or is an opportunity that you're expecting, what would that one thing be at the moment?
My one thing is the one thing which I think should be front and center for anybody in a similar role, irrespective of the sector, irrespective of the size of spend, irrespective of whether it's direct, indirect, GNFR, GFR, whatever. I think the one thing and the continued focus is as follows: the demonstration of value
Right.
on a daily basis. To me, I generally wake up in the morning and I think, how are we best demonstrating value? Now, value comes in a number of different ways. It doesn't mean, oh, I got 5 to 10% off this, therefore that's job done. In some cases, it's have we provided enough of information to make a rounded decision?
Yep.
Do we understand the consequences if we cancel this contract and the ramifications? Have we put the right safeguards in place?
Got it.
Have we got control and visibility across our consumption and our use? Do we understand what we've committed to? Do we understand the risks? For example, I'll give you a few examples. For example, if we entered a 3 to 5 year volume-based agreement, how do we truly know we can meet these volumes or these commitments over that period? Because we all know in 3 to 5 years, organizations change and people come and go. So practicalities like that. So the demonstration of value, to me, everyone who sits in procurement from a leadership perspective has to have that. Maybe not at the front, but in their conscious and in their behavior and the demeanor, because there's never a point in time where that conversation is not being had, conducted, or you're being assessed against. I try to make the following comparator. When I was in consultancy, I always believed in a few key principles. Some people may disagree with them, but these were the ones that, excuse me 1 second. It's a robocall.
Don't worry.
Which comes in.
We can really easily edit out. If you just start again from when I was in consultancy, and then we'll do the stitch together. Don't worry. Okay. By the way, I just had a panic attack and switched the volume off on my phone as well, so I forgot.
What happens is we don't really we only have a landline for other purposes, but we get robocalls all the time, and they're a pain in the.
I'm pitching mine. I'm getting finally. We've got. I've been on copper wire at home, so we've had Starlink, and we've just had full fibre to the house. So we're getting the full fibre installed on Tuesday. So I'm going back up home to go and get that done and then come back to my tent. But EE asked me the question, do you still want to keep your landline? And I've said, actually, no, it's going to go, because in the old days when it was powered, it was the only reliable thing you had. But now if the power goes off, it goes off as well.
Yes, it goes off. It goes off, or you get things like that, which I can never mitigate against.
Right. So deep breath. Deep breath. If you literally start by saying, when I was working in consulting, and then I'll stitch the two together.
Okay. So when I was working in consulting, I used to always apply the following principles. Now, these are ones I personally felt were relevant. One is a consultant should always be, to some extent, in a state of paranoia and
Yeah.
insecure, because you should never get complacent. I should never feel that, you've got complete control and complete assurity over everything. You see, you've always got to have that level of discomfort that, things could possibly go in that direction you don't wish for at any point. So what are you going to do
Mhm.
about it? Secondly, the other point I used to always say as a consultant is always remember this: you're a guest in somebody else's house.
Right.
Show the right courtesy, show the right respect, and show the right conduct and behaviour. Remember, whether you think they're doing things well, catastrophically bad, or whatever, always remember you're a
Yeah.
guest in somebody else's
Yeah.
house. So if you're in somebody else's house, what is generally not considered to be good form is to come in, sit in the living room, put your feet on the table, open a few cans of beer, start smoking through your rubbish all over the place, and then ask what's for dinner. These are not normally what
No.
you call acceptable
No.
behaviours. So I think you have to have some key principles in procurement. If I apply what I think is relevant in procurement, I mean the definition and a constant focus on value. And value is not just have I saved X% in this period. It's around things like supplier risk. It's about understanding the consequences of commitments, providing informed information. What I'd say has been one of the key roles in my current position is to provide rounded information to allow our board to make informed decisions about to continue, to terminate, to
Yeah.
extend, to adjust
Yeah.
across many different areas. That's what I think is where we provide additional value. We provide that summarized view, that point of reference, which previously they used to have to get from probably 3, 4, 5 different places.
Got it. Do you know that's such a good insight because amongst the many old chestnuts in procurement, the procurement should have a seat at the table is one of my least favourite. And to be completely clear, I don't believe a CPO needs to be on the board. I regard it as metaphorical, which is, procurement seat at the table does it have a voice and do we have influence? And I think your point about, if you want to be, if you want the board to have an interest and pay attention to you, then you've got to focus on constantly demonstrating the value that you bring to your organization. And it's those two things that we should focus on, not whether we've got a job title or a place on the board, because that's not something we get. It's something you have to earn every day.
Absolutely. I would, emphatically agree with what you just said, Richard. I think we shouldn't be worried about or focused or obsessed with, are we on the board or are we not? Does procurement get the respect, recognition, and
Mm,
reflection that it should? Let your deeds and actions provide that pathway. If you build it, it will come, but it's all by deed and manner and achievement and success. Then these things will follow. What I found in Robert Walters is I've been successful and I've got traction and I've got a very strong relationship with the board and senior management through example, through outcome, through collaboration, through willingly and willfully engaging with the business, and from not lecturing and telling people, well, you should have done it this way, and that was absolutely not the right way to do things, and and if you do it like that again, that's just not acceptable. By not being
yeah,
hectoring
yeah.
or pedantic, lecturing jobs worth, but by understanding we are where we are, and collectively our job is to get out of this situation as best as we can.
Got it. Hectoring is a great word. I haven't heard that for ages. Well, fantastic. All right. Look, thank you for sharing those insights. I suppose, look, just as as a final question, if you were going to give advice to someone who was just starting out in procurement, and what would that piece of advice be?
My advice would be as follows, and these are universal truisms. I think for any role you go for, everything comes down to personal motivation and desire. You've got to want to do something and you've got to be enthusiastic. I'm very fortunate that I have somebody who joined my team who had not been in procurement before and had held a number of roles and had some major challenges to face in life on things which,
Yeah.
you know, are quite profound and material to our existence. And yet what I found is the drive, the determination, the enthusiasm to learn, the eagerness has compensated for the lack of experience that wasn't there before, and that experience is coming. So anyone who's looking at procurement, I think needs to firstly bring to the table a degree of willfulness, enthusiasm, and wish to learn and engage. And what will they get in return? They'll get a chance to do something which very few parts of the business do. You're the essential glue between everything from operations to sales to finance to legal. You're the essential glue in the middle. You bring to bear all these things in a real time, timely basis, which none of these other parts of organization can effectively do in that way. You fill the gaps and the edges between legal and finance,
Hmm.
between operations and HR, and between sales and the back office. That's where we do our best work.
I love it. What a wonderful piece of advice to finish with. David, thank you so much for your time and for sharing both your background and what's on your mind and what you care about. And I have no doubt that your team are blessed with a very good example of leadership as well. So don't downplay yourself on that either. David, thank you. And to those that are watching, we'd welcome your comment. If you would like to be a guest, please let me know. And as ever, we'll just continue exploring and sharing what, as David has said, is a wonderful profession at the heart of organizations. David, thank you very much indeed.
You're most welcome. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you, and bye-bye.